I saw Meta executives repeatedly undermine US national security and betray American values. They did these things in secret to win favor with Beijing and build an $18 billion business in China. When Beijing demanded that Facebook delete the account of a prominent Chinese dissident living on American soil, they did it. And then lied to Congress when asked about the incident in a Senate hearing. Meta executives ignored warnings that this would provide backdoor access to the Chinese Communist Party, allowing them to intercept the personal data and private messages of American citizens. Meta's internal documents describe their sales pitch for why China should allow them into the market by, quote, helping China increase global influence and promote the China dream. The American people deserve to know the truth. Meta has been willing to compromise its values, sacrifice the security of its users, and undermine American interests to build its China business. These executives, they know the harm that this product does. They don't allow their own teenagers to use the products that Meta develops. I mean, the hypocrisy is at every level. This was a project unlike any other project I worked on during my time at Meta, in that it was so centrally led by Mark Zuckerberg, and he was so personally invested in this project. He learnt Mandarin. He traveled to China more than any other country. He had weekly Mandarin sessions with employees. It's hard to overstate how different this project was to any other project. Mark Zuckerberg pledged himself a free speech champion. Yet I witnessed Meta work hand in glove with the Chinese Communist Party to construct and test custom-built censorship tools that silenced and censored their critics. When Beijing demanded that Facebook delete the account of a prominent Chinese dissident living on American soil, they did it. And then lied to Congress when asked about the incident in a Senate hearing. The willingness to censor was not the only troubling thing I witnessed. I watched as executives decided to provide the Chinese Communist Party with access to Meta user data, including that of Americans. Meta does not dispute these facts. They can't. I have the documents. As recently as this Monday, they claim that they do not operate their services in China. Another lie. In fact, they began offering products and services in China as early as 2014. That hasn't stopped. Their own SEC filings from last year show that China is now Meta's second biggest market. Meanwhile, Meta's AI model, Llama, has contributed significantly to Chinese advances in AI technologies like DeepSeek. Facebook's secret mission to get into China was called Project Aldrin and was restricted to need-to-know staff. There was no bridge too far. Meta built a physical pipeline connecting the United States and China. Meta executives ignored warnings that this would provide backdoor access to the Chinese Communist Party, allowing them to intercept the personal data and private messages of American citizens. The only reason China does not currently have access to US user data through this pipeline is because Congress stepped in. Meta started briefing the Chinese Communist Party as early as 2015. These briefings focused on critical emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence. The explicit goal being to help China outcompete American companies. There's a straight line you can draw from these briefings to the recent revelations that China is developing AI models for military use, relying on Meta's Llama model. Meta's internal documents describe their sales pitch for why China should allow them into the market by, quote, helping China increase global influence and promote the China dream. The truth about what has gone on in China matters.
Was Americans' user data ever compromised? Or they ever planned to compromise American user data in any way, do you know?
One of the challenges with the servicing a market as big as China was the internet infrastructure that would underpin that. So I mentioned the cable that they joined between the US and China, and that would be very helpful. But in servicing this market, but it would still mean that the service would be slow. So they contemplated using POP servers, and POP servers as a technical data center that brings the data closer to the end user. The challenge with POP servers is that you can't segregate data. It would have American data, it would have Chinese user data, and it would be on Chinese soil.
So I want to just be clear about this. Here in this document, Facebook is talking about making Chinese user data available to the Chinese government because they're going to store that data in China. Is that correct?
Correct.
But when you store that data in China, Americans who exchange messages or other information with Chinese Facebook users, that would mean the Chinese government could get access to the American data as well. Is that correct?
Through the POP servers, potentially, yes.
And Facebook was willing to take that risk?
Yes, there was a lot of discussion about this, and ultimately, yes.
One of the things that part of their value proposition to China was that they would help them, Facebook that is, would help China outcompete other American businesses. Can you just say more about that? I mean, that seems like an extraordinary thing to me. Here you have an American company going to our chief foreign adversary on whom we currently have tariffs of like 10 billion%, and saying, hey, we'd love to help you. We would love to help you beat all of these other American companies. That's extraordinary. I mean, what can you tell us about that?
I mean, I'd be happy to provide the documentation. I mean, literally the documents in which they were writing this were called our value proposition to be put before the CCP.
So was information related to artificial intelligence part of these briefings? I know you said that there were some sort of informal discussions, but did Facebook actually brief members of the CCP on artificial intelligence, to your knowledge?
Yes, Senator.
And again, was that a once-off, or was this a regular thing?
Senator, I think this is a great area of investigation for your committee.
So why would, you were at Facebook a long time, why would Facebook want to help China with artificial intelligence? I mean, what's the strategy there, do you think? What do you divine the intent to have been?
I think there are lots. So I think we've talked about the general focus of the company of wanting to help China. You know, this is over a period of time where China was rapidly trying to increase its own technological expertise and trying to grow its own homegrown technology company. So it's incredibly valuable to have the brightest minds in the world show you how that technology works, and then I think at the moment, as you're aware, there's a debate in the AI community around whether open source models or closed models are more appropriate. And one of the considerations around that is national security. But it's not clear at this moment whether open source models or closed models will ultimately prevail. And there's a lot of money on the line. In some ways, you could say, it's helpful if you want open source to prevail to have a strong threat from a Chinese model so that you can say it's really important that America wins this and we are the American open source option. And I think you can see the way that strategically plays out.
So what you're saying is Facebook's AI model, Llama, I think it's called, that's an open source model, is that right?
Correct.
And I think they just released Llama 4 or something just recently, the last few days. So that's an open source model. many of the other American competitors, Sam Altman's company, for example, OpenAI, is a closed-sourced model, closed-source code. So Facebook has a fundamentally different take, an open-source model. They're briefing the Chinese government, including CCP officials, on this model, on their information, and then we get the revelation of DeepSeek just a few months ago, China's sort of breakthrough on AI. Do you think that Llama had something to do with DeepSeek? Do you think that information sharing helped lead to DeepSeek?
I think it's been widely reported that the DeepSeek model is in part based on Llama.
And so just playing this out, if China's DeepSeek model, another open source model, I think, right, becomes the chief competitor to these other models in the United States, what you're saying is that it stands to reason, and this is something for us to look into certainly, but it stands to reason that in a way Facebook would benefit from that because you've got this threat in DeepSeek. Facebook is the only other really major American open source model out there. The others aren't built on that platform. So, Facebook's, their profile is raised, the significance of their model is raised, and maybe they become more important than ever. I mean, does that stand to reason?
I think it's a winner-takes-all situation, and I think that would set up Meta in a very strong position.
One of our former colleagues, Senator Leahy, asked Mark Zuckerberg in 2018 whether Facebook would comply with Chinese censorship and surveillance demand. He even asked if Facebook had built censorship tools to enter the Chinese market, and Zuckerberg responded, I'm quoting, "Because Facebook has been blocked in China since 2009, we are not in a position to know exactly how the government would seek to apply its laws and regulations on content were we permitted to offer our service to Chinese users." Ms. Wynn-Williams, was that accurate?
That is not accurate. Hundreds of decisions had been made, and by 2018, they'd been in dialogue directly with the Chinese Communist Party for 4 years.
The fact is, by 2018, Facebook built, it even turned on censorship and surveillance tools that it developed for Chinese security officials, correct?
It developed, and those Chinese Communist Party officials tested the censorship tool and would give feedback and say, this needs to change, or we need this, or we need confidence that you can capture images and filter images we don't want seen it. One example is that Facebook was targeting 13 to 17-year-olds. It could identify when they were feeling worthless or helpless or like a failure. And they would take that information and share it with advertisers. One of the things about advertising is advertisers understand that when people don't feel good about themselves, it's often a good time to pitch a product. People are more likely to buy something. And so what the company was doing was letting these advertisers know that these 13 to 17-year-olds were feeling depressed and saying, now's a really good time to serve them an advertisement. Or if a 13-year-old girl would delete a selfie, that's a really good time to try and sell her a beauty product. Or if a 13-year-old girl is...
So let me interrupt right there. Sure. If she deleted a selfie, then Facebook was in essence, or Meta, Instagram, they were in essence tracking her activity online.
Absolutely. That was taken as a signal and then shared with advertisers.
So they didn't stay given specifically to their app. They traveled in the child's phone.
Absolutely.